Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I got engaged to the love of my life 3 months ago. I knew it was coming because we had talked about marriage several times, but I didn't know when and how exactly he was going to pop the question. It was the cutest proposal ever. He had my friends make me go out with them for the whole day, and our final destination was one of our favorite places, the beach where we met. It was a cozy picnic with electric candles. It looked so pretty, and once I saw him, I knew that he was about to propose. I was speechless and overjoyed, but I wanted to scream at the same time. My emotions were all over the place. He proposed, and I said yes. We started planning our wedding immediately. We wanted something outdoors with just close family and friends because we both don't fancy very large gatherings. When it was time to sort out the IVs so they could go, I made a list and asked my fiancé if he wanted to add anyone else. He added a cousin and 3 ladies, who he explained were his exes. I wondered why he would want his exes to attend his wedding, and not just 1, but 3 of them, but I didn't say anything because I was the one who was getting married to him anyways. So I guess I won. As the months went by, he was getting more and more excited that his exes would be at his wedding. More excited than he was even for the wedding itself and the start of our life together as a married couple. Whenever he spoke, he always found a way to bring it up. I didn't want to seem like the jealous fiancé, so I would just let him speak and then find a way to change the subject. He either wasn't sensitive enough or he deliberately ignored the fact that I always changed the subject and didn't want to talk about his exes because he kept bringing them up. I think it is the latter. He is usually very sensitive and notices everything. He could tell when I wasn't okay with something without me having to speak, but this particular time it was different. It was like there was a different person that came out whenever he brought them up. He wanted me to meet them and asked me if I was excited to, and of course I said yes, even though what I really wanted to do was to scream at him to stop talking about them. I wanted to tell him that I didn't want to meet them, especially not on my wedding day. I immediately dismissed the thought because I told myself that I was being inconsiderate. Inasmuch as it was my day, it was his too, and I wanted him to be comfortable and enjoy it. The day before our wedding, I asked him if there was anything I should know about his exes before we got married the next day. I think he then realized that for months, all he had been doing was talk about how he was excited to have his exes at his wedding. He apologized for not figuring that it would have been uncomfortable for me way sooner because he didn't mean to make me feel that way. He said there was nothing to worry about with his exes and that his relationship with them ended on good terms, and they had always agreed that they were not the right match before they broke up. After the breakup, they usually remained friends. That's how he could invite them to this wedding. He assured me that I would love them and it wouldn't be weird in any way. I really hoped that he was right because I was not interested in any drama on my wedding day. We had the wedding ceremony and it was blissful. The beach hotel catered for our food. They had this really nice courtyard where we did the reception. The moment I was not looking forward to came. It was time to get introduced to the exes. I had spotted them earlier on and took a wild guess on who they were, and I was right. They all looked quite similar, but very different from me. They were pretty and dressed like people you would admire in magazines, with perfectly done makeup and nails. Something about them seemed fake though. I didn't like their vibes, but I brushed it off because I thought it may be me getting a little jealous, so I wasn't going to judge them before I got to know them. My husband stylishly excused himself so we could talk to each other. I made the effort because I knew it would make him happy. The ladies adored him. It was almost like they still loved him or something. They would each talk about their experiences with him and how they missed him so much and the times they had together. The things they said didn't seem like they were talking about the person I met and fell in love with. It was their fake laughs and how they threw shades at me about how he picked someone they won't consider his type that got to me. One of them even said she didn't think that my marriage would last because of it, and it was sad because she really likes me. There was no way I was going to be friends with these people. You could tell that they didn't even like each other. They all wanted to seem like the better person. They all wanted to seem like the better person and the one who had the most influence and the most guys with money. It was irritating, to say the least. I had had it, so I left to be with my husband. I was annoyed and a little insecure because of some of the things he said about me. I almost began to question if I knew who I married and why he would choose someone so different from those in his past relationships. When I say different, I mean different in every way. From their stature to what they liked, how they behaved, and how they dressed, everything was different and very superficial. I wasn't going to be friends with people who had no depth. I was one who took everyone around me seriously. I loved hard and deep, and there was nothing superficial about me. I am more connected to my inner self, and I don't speak too much, only when necessary. My husband was speaking to some guests when I came to him. He seemed surprised and asked why I wasn't with his exes, so I asked him to come somewhere private with me. I told him that I couldn't stand them, and the person they think they know is in the past now, and he needs to accept that and put them in his past too. They were nothing like me, and there was no way we were going to be friends. Plus, they confessed that they still had feelings for him, and that was very awkward. He grinned when I mentioned that they still had feelings for him, but he caught himself and stopped. I couldn't stand it. I told him that if I have to compete with his exes for him, then we had better end the marriage now, before we even start, and we can tell everyone it was a mistake or something. He has to choose between me and his exes, and he has to do it now. He got upset and almost yelled at me, but stopped. He said the reason why he went through all the trouble to get his exes to be at the wedding was because he wanted all of us to be best friends. That was never going to happen, and I knew it more than I knew my name even. I was about to lose it, and it took me everything to keep all my inhibitions in check. I don't want to make a scene on my wedding day. I was about to walk away, but he dragged me back and said we weren't done talking. One thing he hates is people walking out on him, and I knew it, but I didn't want to hear any more of what he was saying. How could he put me in this kind of position? Why should I have any business with his exes or even want to be friends with them? What good would that do to our relationship? These questions plagued my mind as he tried to explain himself. As far as I was concerned, he wasn't making sense. At this time, we were yelling and we had drawn the attention of everyone else. My sister came to try to calm me down so I don't do or say anything I would regret. It was already too late. The newlywed couple got into a fight even before their honeymoon started. I asked him if he was happy and left with my sister. I went back to my suite. The fun can go on without me after all. It is more like my husband's wedding than it is mine. I was so glad that our honeymoon was 2 days after the wedding because I didn't want to go anywhere without talking and reconciling with my husband. What made me sad was the length he was willing to go for his exes. Why does he even care about them in the first place? I'm beginning to think that there is something he isn't telling me. Does he still have feelings for them, so he is acting up? Or did it have to do with something about his ego, so they know that he is now taken? I feel very conflicted. I hate it when we fight because we are always this happy couple. Things became different since his exes came into the picture. What have I gotten myself into? Did I make a mistake by marrying him? He didn't show any signs of infidelity before, and I don't know if that's the case we are facing here or something else. I'm choosing to believe that this is our first hurdle as a couple, and we would overcome it together and get stronger. He came to me after a few hours to apologize. He realized how ridiculous he had been acting. He said that his brother and my sister put him right and make him think of how he would feel if I brought all my exes to my wedding and wanted them to become best friends with him. He said he wouldn't like that very much and thanked me for being patient with him. I love him and I forgive him. I have my husband back. Not the a-hole. Your husband and his exes are, though. In which universe would it be okay to flaunt your exes at the one you are in a relationship with? It was like he was parading them for you. I personally think it had something with his ego, and it's a bigger problem than what it seems, so you need to watch it. You're the a-hole. You got married to him, so you shouldn't let whatever his exes say get to you. Like you said, you won, so why do you care if his exes are at your wedding? They get to see that he is happily married, so that is what you should have showed them, and not make them think that they still have a chance with him because that is what you did. Not the a-hole. How could your husband not see right through these acts of fakeness? I really hope that your marriage lasts, because it seems like you're in for a long ride. Next story. Basically, it was International Day at my 16F school a few days ago. This girl from my class, Beatrice, is a horse girl. She loves horses, is an equestrian, and even owns a horse. Throughout the entirety of the International Day event, Beatrice was rude and disrespectful to anyone whose food didn't look aesthetic. She went to the Turkish table. I was in charge of it, and shot a disgusted look at the menemen, which is basically scrambled eggs but better. She straight up asked me if someone threw up in the pot, then walked away without even trying it. After that, Beatrice headed to the Vietnamese table and insulted the smelly food and was just plain rude and disrespectful again. Everyone was kind of done with her at that point. Some people even talked about asking for her to be removed from the event. This is where I might be the a-hole. After insulting every non-aesthetic table, Beatrice made her way to the Kazakh table. They were serving besh burmak, which is honestly one of the best foods to have ever been made, and once again, insulted it. My best friend was actually in charge of the Kazakh table and told her to at least try a bite before she judged her country's food. If you don't know, besh burmak is traditionally made from horse meat. My friend replaced the horse with a mixture of lamb and beef since horse meat is hard to find in Brazil, where we live. I've tried besh burmak once, and honestly, I don't care that it has horse in it. It's absolutely delicious, and I love it a lot. Apparently, so did Beatrice. My friend and I waited until Beatrice finished her serving of the besh burmak and told her, "You know that's made from horse meat, right?" Beatrice started crying and left the event, as far as I know. Apparently, my friend's parents got an email from Beatrice's parents that same night, shaming them for including horse in a dish. Her and her family apparently laughed about it, and my friend even forwarded me the email. Basically, they're demanding an apology from me and my friend. Am I the a-hole? Should we apologize? Everyone sucks here, but some more than others. I grew up with horses and avoided the stables explicitly because of girls like her. Nose up in the air, floating on a fart bubble, and frankly quite bigoted. I am very familiar with the type and can totally picture how this all went down. She is 100% the a-hole. But you did lie to her. That is where you 5% suck. It would be the one thing to note that traditionally it is made from horse, but to claim that that exact plate had horse in it was a bit evil. All that said, I'd love to think I'd do the same thing. Sometimes a 5% suck is warranted. But no, don't apologize. That would be silly. She should be apologizing to everyone else for being such a bigot. Not the a-hole. Horse girls are the worst. I find that most of them, not all of them, are rich out of their gourds and make it clear that they are. When I was 7, I told a horse girl, who was a year older than me, that the Elmer's glue she was using was made out of dead horses, and she lost her absolute marbles. She cried for like an hour straight until she got picked up by her parents at the end of the day. Next story. My 21F family lives in town and sees me and my daughter all the time. They also wanted to be involved in my pregnancy. Meanwhile, my husband's 23M family were always telling me how disappointed they were that I was pregnant and wanted nothing to do with me until my daughter was born. My husband's family on his mom's side hosts a big Easter gathering every year. That's a 2-hour drive from our house. We went last year for my first time, and I was a bit overwhelmed with all the new people I was around. Although I somewhat enjoyed myself last year, after I got acquainted with everyone, I don't think it would be good for my 1-month-old daughter to be going this year. Every year, at least 80 people are there, and it gets overwhelming fast. My daughter got overwhelmed around a group of 11, so I know 80 would be way too many. Plus, My birthday is the day after Easter, and it was decided before this came up that we'd be celebrating it at home while celebrating Easter to make things easier on myself and my daughter. My husband's family keeps calling and begging us to reconsider bringing my daughter up to the big Easter celebration because they were already excited to meet her and thought that would be the time they'd get to. Yesterday, my husband called me while my mom and I were running errands together and said that his grandfather had called him and said he needed to tell me to reconsider because it isn't fair to them that we decided to stay home this year. I told him that it was left up to me, and I said no already. They needed to stop begging because it was already decided, and I felt disrespected for not being taken seriously. My husband said that they were excited to meet her, and it would be a letdown if we didn't go, and that's why they keep calling. I told him it would only be a letdown if they were expecting us without asking first, and that he can tell them I said no already. And if they keep begging, my daughter and I would not be in attendance ever. He said that wasn't fair to them, to keep my daughter away when my family gets to see her all the time. I told him the difference between my family and his is that my family lives in town and wanted something to do with me while I was pregnant. His family only wanted something to do with me after my pregnancy, and that wasn't fair to me. I told him to tell his family to kindly screw off and to stop calling and begging. Now, his family is calling me an a-hole for only letting my daughter around my family and being a letdown on a once-a-year event. Am I the a-hole for saying no to his family's event? Yes, he is her parent too, but the decision was left up to me by my husband when it was brought up the first time. I have taken her to see his parents who do live in town and did tell my husband to RSVP for all of us next year, but they keep begging for this year. I've also extended the offer of hosting them a few at a time, but they have refused to make the trip down to see her in her home. No, she does not have her shots yet. She gets them April 22nd. Not the a-hole. At 1 month old, baby isn't vexed. Going to an event with over 50 people is just asking for a baby to get sick. And it sounds like they would expect to pass baby around. A 2-hour drive is going to take 3 hours if she's anything like my grandkids. We live 90 minutes from grands 4 and 5. When number 5 was born, she required nearly hourly nursing, snacks. So a 90-minute drive meant 1 to 2 stops, 10 to 15 minutes each for feeding unless they wanted to listen to her screaming and crying for an hour. At a month old, newbies want 2 things, nursing and formula, and the scent and or arms of familiar people, like mom and dad. Anyone who doesn't meet those criteria may be rejected. Is it better to wait for a meeting or to have a screaming, unhappy tiny person? I'll always choose the first option. Husband's family says it isn't fair to them that we decided to stay home this year. What about being fair to you and your family? You're not their little kids whom they get to tell what to do. You are functioning adults that get to decide where and with whom to celebrate anything. And 1 month is quite young to be dragging around to visit everyone else's germs. Your husband needs to grow a spine and stand up to his family and support you. He is too into pleasing them. Cut the cord, buddy. Not the a-hole.